Hello everyone, welcome to our next video. And if you want to know what controls your thinking, what controls your heartbeat, also what controls your balance while you are riding a bicycle, well, you are exactly in the right spot, because today we are going to discuss about the human brain, how it controls the different functions of the body. So if you want to know the answers to all those questions that I just asked, well, you make sure you watch the whole video, because today I am going to clarify those with you. So without wasting much time, let's get directly into the topic. Before we start off with the brain directly, we need to have some context. So the context is that our nervous system has two main parts. The nervous system is divided, if I write it as NS, nervous system is divided equal into the CNS and the PNS. So CNS means the central nervous system. This is called the peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system is made up of the brain and the spinal cord. That's what makes the central nervous system. The two parts of the central nervous system, one is the spinal cord that goes from your backbone, and then the brain. And the peripheral nervous system controls the different peripheral nerves. This is the nerves associated with your sensory organs. These peripheral nerves and the brain and the spinal cord, they act together to form the nervous system. So what we are going to concentrate today is on this, the brain of our body, which is a part of the central nervous system. So what actually happens is this peripheral nerve will collect the information from the environment. Whatever changes are going on around you, the peripheral nervous system will be the one to sense it. This will then pass the information to the spinal cord. The spinal cord will gather all the information and pass it to the brain. The brain will process the information and then pass the information back to the muscles in your body, which will do the action. So this is a brief understanding of how the whole process works. But how does the brain do the processing, and what are the different parts of the brain that actually play those roles? So let's start off with that. I'll be attaching one picture here so that you can understand easily as I go along with the process. So what we have here, there are different parts of the brain, different sections. The first part is the frontal part of the brain called the forebrain. Then we have the midbrain at the middle section, and then we have a hindbrain at the back of our head. So we have a forebrain, middle brain at the center of the brain, since it is an oval shaped, or you can say a spherical shaped body. So at the center of the sphere we have the midbrain, and at the back we have the hindbrain. So these are the three parts of the brain. Now let's look into the functions of each part. First comes the forebrain. The forebrain is associated with all the thinking skills that you have. Thinking skills may include whenever you get the stimulus, the way you respond. But before responding, you obviously try to analyze what is going on. As for example, suppose you smell something burning. As soon as you smell something burning, the brain understands that okay, this smell relates to something that may catch fire, and what you have to do is go on, look for the fire and put the fire off. So this analysis done by the brain is done in the frontal part of the brain called the forebrain. So forebrain will take all the decision making, or the thinking skills are done by the forebrain. Then the forebrain will pass on the information to your muscles so that you can act accordingly. So thinking includes whatever you see, whatever you smell, whatever you hear, or etc. These sort of things that requires some thinking in order to act to that. These sort of thinking related actions are all analyzed by the forebrain, the frontal part of the brain. Then we move on to the midbrain and the hindbrain. Now midbrain and the hindbrain are essential because we have some sort of actions called the involuntary actions. Now what are involuntary and voluntary actions? Voluntary actions are those which we need the attention, we need to think about them in order to act on them, which is done by the frontal brain, that is the forebrain. But there are some actions which are involuntary, means we don't have to think about them, but they always keep on going on in our body. Just for example, your heartbeat. Our heartbeat will always go on. It does not matter we think or we don't think about it. Even if we think about our heartbeat, we can't stop it. It just goes on. It is a continuous process, and it does not require our brain to think about it so that it can run. So since our brain does not have a role in thinking about it, that's why it is not the part of the forebrain. This type of involuntary actions are actually taken care of by the midbrain and the hindbrain, especially the midbrain. Also, One very good example, whenever you smell some sort of food, you get water in your mouth. You start mouth watering. That means saliva comes out. Now this salivation, or the process of coming out of saliva, is actually controlled by the hindbrain. So these are some involuntary actions. You can't control your salivation. So whenever you are hungry and you smell something good of any food, you will automatically start salivating. So this process is involuntary and hence controlled by the midbrain and the hindbrain. So if you have any other example, think about them. Think about which actions are actually involuntary, which you can't think about. Another example is breathing. We breathe 24/7, 365 days in a year, but we don't always think about breathing. But breathing continues, because without breathing we can't survive. So breathing continues, and this is also an involuntary action where we don't think about it. So there are many such actions which we don't think about, and yet it goes on in our body, and all these are controlled by the midbrain and the hindbrain. Now if we move on to the hindbrain, you can see that the hindbrain contains three parts: the pons, the medulla and the cerebellum. This pons and the medulla, these will be controlling the involuntary actions. But what is the function of the cerebellum? A sac-like structure that you will find, it looks like an alveoli. So this cerebellum, its function is to maintain the balancing of your body. Balancing and keeping the equilibrium means maintaining a good posture whatever you are doing in whatever situation you are. So one of the good examples is when you ride a bicycle. So when we are riding a bicycle, at the beginning it is tough for us to learn, but once we learn, we can maintain a good balance with the bicycle. This balancing is done by the hindbrain, that is the cerebellum. Now cerebellum also controls one of the most I can say simple example. This is when you walk. So when we are walking, or even when we are sitting down, our ability to walk with proper balance and keeping a proper posture, this is maintained by the cerebellum. Now imagine if the cerebellum stops working. In that case, you will not be able to balance your body. So if you want to walk, you can't walk properly, you will keep on falling because you can't maintain the balance of your body. So cerebellum is one of the most important parts of the brain, because without it, our motion will be hampered. So this is all about the different parts of the brain and how do they act. Now we must keep in mind that brain is a very delicate organ. It is a muscular organ. It is not a bony organ. It is made up of muscles, and these muscles need to be protected just like our heart is protected by the rib cage. Since heart and brain are the two most important parts of our body, so the brain also requires some sort of protection, and as a result we have got this hard bony structure called the skull. And the skull is responsible for providing the mechanical support to the brain. But inside the skull there is a fluid or a liquid called the cerebral fluid. This cerebral fluid actually helps as a shock absorber, and these fluids are also present in your backbone where you have the spinal cord. So your vertebrate column or your vertebra and your skull, they will act as the mechanical supporters. They will protect your brain and the spinal cord from breaking. But whenever you get a shock, or whenever you get hit on your head or your spinal cord, the shock that is provided needs to be absorbed, and these shock absorbers are the fluids that are present in your brain and in your spinal cord. So this fluid and the hard bony structure of your backbone and your skull, they will act as the mechanical protectors of your brain and spinal cord. So this is how the brain and spinal cord are actually protected using our skull and the backbone. Now another thing which I started at the beginning, that how does the brain work? I have given you the brief explanation that peripheral nerves will all collect the information from the sensory organs. So let's take one example where a person hits another person. Suppose your friend slaps you. So in that case, what will happen? If your friend slaps you, your skin will sense all the information. Actually, the skin does not sense. Actually, the peripheral nerves present in your skin will sense the pain. They will send it back to the brain, where the brain will process the information of what has actually happened. And after the brain has processed, it will pass the information back to your muscles. Muscles means your hand, so that you can slap him back. Well, that's how the brain works, where the peripheral nerves will collect all the information, pass it on to the spinal cord. The spinal cord will pass to the brain will think about it, will analyze the problem, it will find a solution and bring it back to the muscles so that we can act on that situation. So that is all about how the brain works, which part of the brain performs which function. Although there are lots and lots of functions of the brain and it takes years and years of study to understand, but as of now, for this class, for this at this age, this is all you need to know. That will be sufficient. If you want more disclosure about how the human brain works, you can go out onto Google Scholar. That is a page where you will find some scientific articles. So in Google Scholar, if you search about the functions of brain, you will get many papers. You can search them there and you will get to know how research papers are written as well. So I'll give the link of Google Scholar at the description below so that you can go out and check it and see how scientific papers are written. So that is all about today's video. In the next video, we will move on to see how plants play the role of coordination. And since they don't have any nerves or brain, so how do they act and what is their coordination system? That's what we will see in our next video. So for now, that is all about today's discussion. And until next time, cheers.